Revenge films.
My name is Sarah. My husband's name is Michael, and because he was an only child, it was a given for him to look after his parents. And he also seemed to think that as his wife, I became the slave of his family, and that was a given. When we got married, Thomas's mother insisted on living with us. At the time, I still loved Michael a lot, and I thought that I would be able to get along well with his mother and take care of both of them. However, when we eventually moved in together, the only thing waiting for me was abuse from my mother-in-law. When I would cook any meals, she would say that they were disgusting and throw them away. If I was cleaning, she would yell at me, "You missed Spot by the window," and breathe down my neck around the neighborhood. She told everybody that I was a useless daughter-in-law and a failure as a wife. Even when I got her any presents, she would tell me that, "You have terrible taste," and then throw it straight into the trash can. As a cherry on top, she would use the fact that my parents had already passed away against me and tell me don't transfer that short lifespan to her side of the family. To rub salt into the wound, Michael would always take his mother's side. He would say,
"My mother didn't say anything wrong, so you just need to try harder."
That was my life. But then we discovered that I was pregnant. I was so happy that I was going to finally become a mother. And not only that, but I didn't think that there would be any grandmother in the world who wouldn't be happy to see their grandchild. So, when I informed my mother-in-law this, "But then what are you going to do when I'm old? If you waste your time with something like that, you're not going to be able to earn any money." Her response was so unexpected and outrageous that I was at a loss for words. But then, I was even more stunned by what my husband said next.
That's true. My salary's still low, too. So I think we should let this one go.
Ever since I was young, I loved children, and I was so excited about the pregnancy that for the first time ever, I lost my temper. I raised my voice at my husband and said, "Are you planning on killing our child?" And I was somehow able to get him to stop. Then, I turned to my mother-in-law and said, "Once I have the baby, I'm sure we'll figure it out. And once I get the hang of things, I'll work hard to earn money." However, my pregnancy was far from easy. Between the physical difficulties and my mother-in-law constantly abusing me, saying things like, "I feel so sorry for that child that you're the mother. I'm never going to acknowledge your kid as my grandchild. Even if it's a boy, I won't think of it as an heir to the family." She was constantly insulting me, but I desperately tried to tolerate it. During that time, I begged my husband to let us live separately from his mother. But because he was such a mama's boy and loved his mom more than anything, there was no way that he would accept that. Even still, I somehow managed to tolerate it, and eventually, my morning sickness started to calm down and I was entering the safe zone of my second trimester. But then one day, I was getting ready to go out to do the groceries, so I grabbed my bag and I was about to go down the stairs. However, at that moment, before I knew it had happened, my mother-in-law had pushed me from behind down the stairs. My first reaction was to cover my stomach, and so I fell down the stairs, banging up my back, but in the end, those efforts were in vain. I found that out when I woke up in the hospital a couple of hours later. When I opened my eyes, my mother-in-law was still sitting in the room, grinning. "What a useless wife you are that you can't even give birth to a child. If you're a real mother, even if you were to get kicked on the stairs, you should be able to persevere through that at least." That was all she said to me, and then she walked out of the hospital room. I felt like all of the blood in my body was going to boil because I was so angry. Not long after that, my husband walked into the room. And, once again, I was even more shocked by the words that came out of his mouth.
If I'm being honest, we should have just aborted the baby like my mom told us to. But since it was living this long, it's a little bit unfortunate, isn't it?
My husband was speaking as if this had nothing to do with him. And within those words, I could hear what he was really trying to say, which is that we should have just done what his mother had said from the very beginning. I had just lost my precious child that I was so excited to welcome, and I became so furious with my mother-in-law and my husband that I vowed to get revenge on them. As soon as I was discharged from the hospital, I went to go purchase a hidden camera as well as a voice recorder. And then, I went to a psychologist, and I received a diagnosis for depression, and I began searching for a part-time job so that I could work as soon as I went through with the divorce. Perhaps my mother-in-law thought that if I worked, then there would be more money to take care of her in her older years, so she was thrilled that I got a job. After that, I had absolutely no desire to do anything in bed with my husband anymore, but when I refused, he started cheating on me. But I thought that this was perfect for my plan, so I let him do as he wished, and I began to collect my evidence. And then, once I had enough evidence and enough savings proceed, I went to a lawyer for the divorce from my husband, and also to sue my mother-in-law for emotional damages and causing my depression. Then I went home and I said to my husband, "Why don't you go on a vacation to the hot springs with your mom? It is Mother's Day after all, and you haven't done anything for her. So why don't you take the day off of work and go with her? I'm sure she would be happy. Then I can spend the day cleaning up the house for you." I quickly made reservations for a 4-day, 3-night hot springs tour for them, and then they both skipped out the door to go on vacation together. During that time, I went back to the psychiatrist, and I had them write out my final diagnosis for depression. I went home, packed up my belongings, and succeeded in escaping out of the house. On top of that, before I left the house, I completely forgot that I had left the bedsheets out to dry outside, even though there was a huge thunderstorm coming. And silly me, I accidentally told prominent people all around the neighborhood about my husband's affair. Oh, and I also accidentally played them recordings that I had of my mother-in-law's abusive words. As a final piece of the puzzle, I left the signed divorce papers on the living room table, and I left the house. On the day that Michael and his mom were back from their vacation, they must have gotten home and found that form on the table, because I woke up to multiple missed calls from him.
What on earth is going on with you? My mom is furious! If you hurry up and come home, then I'll help you apologize to her. You can't live without me, can you? So you should hurry up and come back!
In the morning, I received this message from him, but as if I would even want to apologize. Just seeing his face would make me want to throw up, and just seeing my mother-in-law's face would make me so furious. I don't think I would be able to handle it myself, so why on earth would I apologize? When I saw this joke of a message, it made me think, what did I ever see in Michael to begin with, and why did I marry him? It was disgusting how much of a mama's boy he was, and his mother was more important to him than the life of his own child. I seriously think he's a failure as a human being. My stupid husband must have thought that even though I left the house, I would come back immediately. But a few days later, he was about to find out that that was never going to be the case, because I refused to entertain him. Apparently, he contacted the lawyer whose number I had left on the table along with the divorce papers. And that was when the lawyer informed him that I would be suing him for the settlement fee for his affair, as well as suing his mother for the emotional damages that she had caused me. The lawyer, of course, already had all the data that had recorded, but within that, there was evidence that my mother-in-law had pushed me down the stairs, as well as recordings of her saying things like, "That's right, you don't need a child anymore anyway, and it's a waste of money to get an abortion anyway, that's why I pushed you down the stairs. Now you were able to get an abortion without the surgery, so you saved some money. You should be grateful to me." It was all in the recordings. It seems that Michael didn't believe that his mother would actually push me down the stairs, so he had a hard time believing it. But whether he wanted to believe it or not was none of my business anymore. Because I had plenty of evidence of my husband's affair, and evidence that my mother-in-law pushed me down the stairs and was able to sue them both for a very high settlement fee, an amount that neither of them could afford. High enough that, even if they spent the rest of their lives working day and night, they probably wouldn't even make a dent in it. In the beginning, I was going to sue them for the criminal act. However, because I wasn't able to provide concrete evidence that I lost my baby because of the incident with the stairs, I was told that there was a possibility that I wouldn't be able to win that case in court. If I won the case, my mother-in-law would go to prison, and I would be able to make her suffer. But if not, as long as she didn't cause any other incidents, she would be able to carry on with her life as normal. And so, instead of suing them for a crime, I decided to sue them for a settlement fee that they would have to struggle for the rest of their lives to pay back. As for my husband and his affair, because they had so much evidence against him, he had no choice but to acknowledge it. But when it came to his mother, he tried to defend her.
My mom is saying that it was an accident, so you have no grounds to do that. So I think you should rethink this illegal settlement fee that you're trying to get out of her. I know, if you still want kids, then we can still make one, and this time, my mom says that she'll adore the baby too!
Apparently, he asked my lawyer to tell me this, but there was no way on earth that I would ever want to have a child with that man ever again. When I got the divorce from my husband, it was a given that I also collected a settlement fee from his mistress. And that was when I found out that his mistress was actually also married. And with this, her husband also found out about the affair. Later on, Michael and his mistress were both sued by her husband, and I received a furious message from Michael, but that was none of my business anymore. Every adult knows the risk of having an affair like that, and they both knew that they were married, and they still proceeded to have that relationship. That's their own responsibility for not thinking about the worst case scenario or the responsibility that comes with it. I had no desire to see either of them ever again, and I left the rest to my lawyer. My mother-in-law tried to say there was no way she could pay that kind of money, so she had no choice but to put her house up for sale to make the first payment. And then, even though she was living off of Michael's income until then, because they were going to have to pay a very high settlement fee, my ex-mother-in-law also had to go out and get a job. For her adult life, she had never had a job before, but now she was being forced to work morning until night. But even then, every paycheck would only go towards the settlement fee to be paid to me. And because they barely had anything left for themselves, they were stuck living in poverty. I'm sure she wanted to just rely on Michael, but because he also needed to pay a settlement fee to myself as well as his mistress's husband, I'm sure he didn't have anything to spare at all. Given my mother-in-law's age, she probably won't be able to pay back the full settlement fee, even if she worked until her last day. But until she takes her last breath, I plan on making her take responsibility for my baby's life that she stole. Even if she becomes sick or she's no longer able to stand, as long as she has to pay back that settlement fee, I'm sure she would even have enough money to put herself into a nursing home. I hope she spends the rest of her life regretting what she did to me.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.